much for making time to meet with me today for this Hippocrates Docs project. First of all, I want to take a moment to thank you for all the spectacular work that you've done over the last 30 years for the plant-based movement. And not only have you educated the public on the benefits of whole food plant-based diet, but you inspired countless physicians, including myself and my husband. So just tell us, our viewers, a little bit about yourself, because some of them are just starting on this journey and are not familiar with you and your work.
Right. I guess like most doctors, I really didn't know much about nutrition either. And I grew up in the Midwest where it was a pretty typical unhealthy diet. However, research has really shown that nutrition plays a huge role. So in 1985, I set up a group called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine to try to advocate for healthy diets, but we do more than that. We also do research studies to nail down what a diet change will actually do for a person with diabetes or weight problems or whatever. And then we have also educational programs for doctors, continuing education programs like a conference, scanning on the web and things like that. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
So yeah, I know that you're the founder and president of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and it's a great organization. You mentioned research studies. Can you tell us some of the studies, especially the ones that have shown reversal of diabetes?
Yeah, starting, I guess it was the mid-1990s, we started testing out plant-based diets for diabetes, and they were kind of the opposite of what a lot of people think. Many people think if you're going to tackle diabetes, you should limit carbohydrates. But that's based on the idea that carbohydrates release sugar into the blood, and so you want to limit that. However, if you look at the epidemiology of it, if you look at different countries, the countries that have the least diabetes happen to be the ones that have a pretty high carbohydrate diet. They're eating rice in Japan, for example, and in another place it might be beans or starchy root vegetables, but they don't have much diabetes until McDonald's comes in and pushes all the rice out and brings in the meat and the cheese. So we thought, well, wait a minute, let's try the plant-based diet. And it worked really well. And so in 2003, NIH gave us a grant to do a head-to-head trial of a low-fat vegan diet versus what I'm going to call a conventional diabetes diet, limiting calories for weight loss and limiting carbohydrates. And we had participants with type 2 diabetes. And it was pretty much a slam dunk, I have to say, for the, I mean, although everybody does well, but with the plant-based diet, they do much better. Their improvement in blood sugar is better. When the test we use is A1C, and it improved 3 times more in that group compared to the other group. Cholesterol goes down because you're not eating cholesterol, you're not eating animal fat. People lose weight very, very easily. And so then, since then, it's really kind of been studies on the application of this approach to things like neuropathy, or see how it goes in the workplace, that kind of thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, so I know plant-based diet is the optimal diet for human health, but a lot of people like to ask, so what's wrong with eating dairy, fish, meat, and eggs, at least in small amounts?
Yes, well, lots of things. First of all, when it comes to dairy, we all kind of grew up with this idea that dairy is good for you and it's got calcium and whatever. By the way, dairy does have calcium. That's true. But the cow doesn't make that calcium. That calcium is an element in the ground. Calcium is in the earth. And so the roots of plants pull the calcium into the plant, and the cow eats the calcium, and some of it ends up in the milk. You absorb about 30% of that. Instead, if you ate green leafy vegetables directly, you would get them from the natural source without worrying about the cow. And the absorption from green vegetables is, for most of them, it's much higher than it is from milk. There are some exceptions, but for the most, it's much higher. So you don't need dairy for calcium, that's the first thing. There are good reasons for not having dairy. The fat that is in milk is mostly saturated fat, which is linked to heart disease and to Alzheimer's. So if you skim the fat off and you have skim milk, what you're left with is a sugary beverage. Lactose is sugar, and that's the principal nutrient in non-fat dairy. And you can turn it into yogurt if you want. All you're doing there is breaking the sugar into smaller sugars. So it's kind of sugary goo that is designed by nature to make a calf grow, but not designed for an adult hominid like us. So, we're really herbivores by nature, for the most part, and that's a healthy diet, and we try to eat like carnivores, but we're really not.
Yeah. I know you've written numerous books, and your newest one is The Cheese Trap. What made you specifically write a book on cheese and taking cheese out of our diet?
It was the wildest thing. We were doing these research studies, and people would get so much better, and they would say, this vegan diet is great, I'm losing weight so easily, and my numbers have never looked so good, except I really crave, and you know exactly what they're going to say before they even finish the sentence. They don't say I crave a ham sandwich. They crave cheese. And I kept hearing about this over and over again. I think, why is that? Cheese smells like old socks. Why do people crave it so much? So I started digging into it, and we found several things. First of all, cheese, it really is unhealthy. I mean, it's so high in bad fat and cholesterol, and it's got more sodium than potato chips, ounce per ounce. Terrible. But it has other health effects. It has hormones in it that are just traces, but they might be enough to affect human biology. And the third thing is that cheese has an addictive potential, which everybody kind of knows informally, but we found that it's biochemically understandable because there actually are mild opiates. They're in milk, but they're concentrated in the cheese, and they attach to the very same brain receptors the heroin attaches to. So I just thought that was all fascinating. So I decided for all of those cheese addicts out there, I wanted to give them a guide to weaning themselves away from cheese. And I gave them a few recipes that I'm going to call sort of cheese methadone to help them break their addiction.
Right. Well, thank you so much for writing that book. And thank you for opening the Barnard Medical Center. I would like to hear a little bit more about that, because I am a primary care clinic who is trying to transition towards lifestyle medicine clinic. And how is Barnard Medical Center different from a routine primary care clinic?
Well, we're not different in every way. I mean, we're a primary care clinic. So if a person comes in, we'll use medication. If they need it, if somebody's got a sprained ankle, we've got ACE wraps, and if they need a flu shot, we'll give them a flu shot. All the usual things that you get in a primary care clinic. Mm-hmm. But there's one thing we add, and that is we recognize that if a person comes in with a high cholesterol level, they do not have a Lipitor deficiency. What they got is a little too much butter in their diet. That's what got them there. And if a person has diabetes, they don't have a metformin deficiency. So at most clinics, you got diabetes, here's your metformin, here's your Lipitor. You got high blood pressure, here's some lisinopril. Wait a minute. The problem in those cases is food. So we may need medication to tackle it, but let's focus on the food part of it, because if we tackle that, sometimes you don't need all the rest, or you don't need so much. So, and the way it works is we have a team. The doctor, by the way, the doctors don't have to spend an hour lecturing the patient about food. They need about 3 minutes really to just say, here's why it's important. Because right behind them is the registered dietitian who sits down with the patient and the reluctant spouse and goes through all of the food changes they need to make. And then the next thing is we have classes that are ongoing every week for free, and the patient can go, and between the doctor saying, this is what we're going to do, the dietitian giving them really a roadmap in the form of menus and cooking tips and shopping lists and all that kind of stuff. And then a class where they can come every single week and work with other people. It is, first for the patients, it's so empowering because suddenly they're a collaborator. But for the doctors, it's the greatest thing in the world, because so many doctors I talk to, they're in a factory basically. The patients come in and I'm dispensing prescriptions, and it's the next one, and I'm not practicing the medicine the way I wanted to practice it. We don't do that. The idea is you need to make diet changes available to patients, and you can't do it unless you have a system for making it work. And we take all insurances, and the insurance pays for the dietitians. It's not like a challenging thing to do. It's just a question of making sure that you provide these things. And by the way, the other thing is I don't hire anybody who is not willing to do a 100% plant-based diet themselves, because you're just not credible. If you're telling somebody to quit smoking and they can see the Marlboros in your cigarette in your shirt pocket, no good. And if a person isn't following a healthy diet themselves, then they don't know how to answer patients' questions about,
Right.
Is there a fast food chain I can go to, or is there a substitute for mayonnaise? Or, if they haven't done it, they're not going to know the answer to these questions. So I hire people who are non-smoking, health conscious, vegan folks, and by the way, there's no shortage of them. 20 years ago, there weren't all that many doctors and dietitians doing this, but now there's lots. So I think the future is bright.
Yeah, and thank you for opening that center. Ashley Waddell actually set up an appointment for my husband and I to tour the center on Thursday afternoon before we come in for the PCRM conference on Friday.
Excellent, great, yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to learning from that model and trying to incorporate that in my own practice.
Well, let me also mention that on Friday and Saturday of that week, when you're at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, you'll hear about our model, but there's a whole bunch of other practitioners who have their own models. We're going to have about 900 doctors there. Doctors, medical students, dietitians, and they're all going to share kind of their own ways of doing this, because we're all learning together about the best way of doing it. Some people use a shared visit model. Some people are, we don't do pediatrics here, we do family medicine. So I think you got to be like 16 to see us. So some people are applying this in pediatrics, and it's such a fantastic time to share different ways of working.
Absolutely. And just to let you know a little bit more about the project that I'm interviewing you for, Just One Thing for Health, subscribers actually get videos, like 4 or 5 minute videos from routine plant-based doctors like me. And then we're interviewing the giants of the movement like you on the benefits of whole food plant-based diet. So what advice would you give someone, one of those subscribers, who is just starting their journey of moving towards a plant-based diet?
Yep. We see this a lot because we've had literally thousands of people in our research studies and in our classes and in the medical center come through, and they all kind of have the same worry that, okay, I need to make a big change in my diet, but how do I start? I don't know where to start. But here's what we do. We break it into 2 steps, and these 2 steps take 1 month. The first week of that month, don't take anything out of your diet. You're not giving up anything.
Okay.
What you're doing in that first week is trying out the possibilities, checking out the possibilities. So, what could be a vegan breakfast? I guess oatmeal, but I haven't made it since I was a kid. So buy it. So for the first week, you're gonna get some oatmeal and you'll try it, put some blueberries and slivered almonds on top, see if you like it. And you've got to come up with breakfasts and lunches and dinners that you're just gonna try. So let's see, instead of meat chili, I'll try the bean chili. Instead of meat sauce on my spaghetti at my favorite restaurant, I'll try their arrabbiata sauce with some sauteed spinach, and I'll try the salad and the minestrone. I'll just see if it's any good. So 7 days to do step 1, check out the possibilities of what you could eat that's vegan. Now I got a step 2, and that's for the next 3 weeks, jump in the deep end. We're gonna do it all vegan all the time, but it's foods you've already picked out in the first week, so you're comfortable with it, and it's only 3 weeks. So at the end of 3 weeks, you don't have to continue it. But what always happens is people are physically healthier. Their blood sugar is going down, they're losing weight, their energy is good, their digestion finally figured itself out. And then the other thing is their tastes are adapting, and they're thinking, I thought this was like going to be hard, but it's not hard. And I like the taste of what I had. And there were a few things I didn't like, and I'm not having those, but these things are really successful. So I think I'm going to do it for another week or 2 weeks. And then pretty soon it's like quitting smoking. For a person to get through a week of not smoking is tough. Yeah. Once they like not having stinky clothes and yellow fingers. And they say, I'm going to do, it just becomes second nature. And then after a while, you knew you were happy as a smoker, but you're happier as a non-smoker. And you knew you were happy as a meat eater, but you end up discovering that you're happier and better adjusted, having left all that stuff aside, and it becomes so easy. But because it sounds so daunting to do this forever and ever and ever, I just say, give me a month. Step 1, try a week, check out the possibilities. 3 weeks, put it to use. Always a short-term focus, so you could stop anytime you're in 100% control. But pretty soon, it's going to be like I wish I jumped in earlier because the water feels so good.
Well, that's wonderful advice, and I think I'm going to use that on my patients. Dr. Barnard, when do you see us reaching a tipping point where awareness of the power of food to prevent chronic disease is mainstream for humanity?
Wow, what a fantastic question. It's already mainstream in a certain sense, which is the dietary guidelines for Americans that dictate what kids eat in school and every other federal food policy. They said back in 2015 that there are 3 healthy diet patterns: vegetarian, Mediterranean, which I'm going to call vegetarian light, and healthy US, whatever that is. But vegetarian is one of 3 diet patterns they recommended for all Americans to be familiar with. So you don't get much more mainstream than that. And the American Diabetes Association started recommending plant-based diets as one of the treatment options. Oh, when did they do this? 2007 or 8, something like that, 2009, somewhere in there. The AMA, the American Medical Association, came out a couple of years ago saying that plant-based diets ought to be part of food assistance programs. Last year, they came out saying that hospitals ought to offer plant-based meals to every patient. Throw out the bacon, they said. So in a way, we're already there. However, we've got headwinds, and that is that there are people making money off of cheese, and off of meat, and Americans still eat 1 million chickens every single hour. And so money is keeping those things front and center, and the addictive, in quotes, qualities of long-standing diet habits, those break only slowly. So we're kind of where we are with tobacco, only about a generation removed. Everybody knew that tobacco was bad. It took them a while to quit. But even to this day, 1 out of every 5 Americans, something like that, still smokes, despite the fact that they know it's wrong or bad. That's where with meat, everybody knows the vegan diet is good for them. Some of them are a little worried about nonsensical issues like, is there really protein? They haven't sorted those things out, but they will. So I think we're there, but dealing with the challenges of industry is an ongoing issue, and that's a lot of what we do here at PCRM.
Is there anything we as individuals can do to help our society reach that tipping point?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. You know what? Even though we work on policy, and so we're always pushing the federal government, we have books, we have a lot of programs, I honestly think that the biggest driver of all these things is just kind of what I'm going to call noise that people make individually, spreading the word to other people that we know. And with social media now, we can do that in such a great way, and this is what you're doing. The more that we reach out to other people in our own lives, in our own networks, through all the social media platforms that we can share new ideas, new products, new recipes, new ideas that they were not really aware of before. And I think that's what really changes it. The key is not to be silent, not to be quiet. When you got something that can save somebody's life, we really have to get the word out there about it.
Yeah, and I find myself saying this to my patient these days, that after I've looked at this research and after I've seen this, if I don't tell you about that, it's negligence on my part. So I am going to tell you about this, and then you decide where you want to go and how you want to get there. So yeah. Oh,
absolutely. That's fantastic you do that. And there's no reason to feel shy about it, because, let's face it, if you're handing out a prescription to an arthritis patient for methotrexate or something like that, you've got a list of side effects as long as your arm. And yet we expect patients to adhere to that. So if we're suggesting that a person eat broccoli, this is not like a terrible thing.
Right.
It's just that we all have kind of these kind of like childish resistances that came from back from when we were a toddler in the high chair biting the spoon that our mother wanted to stick in our mouth. So your patients have a little bit of that in them, but frankly, they're so glad that you're actually addressing nutrition with them, and they realize doctors haven't taken the time to do that before, so they're very grateful to you.
Thank you. Dr. Barnard, it has been such an honor to talk to you today. I really appreciate the time that you've taken out to speak to me and Hippocrates docs and our viewers. And congratulations on the wonderful work that you're doing, both at PCRM and Barnard Medical Center. Thank you so much for getting this information out there to help people improve their health.
Well, let me thank you and congratulate you as well. Everything we're doing is a team effort. We're all working in our own ways. So I'm delighted with your success and wish you much more in the future. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you.